And so the biggest lesson that I would take from that is that I see a lot of entrepreneurs who they want to keep their idea to themselves because they think that someone's going to steal it.
Worst possible idea
To keep it to yourself. And so the only way that you see opportunities and get better and get opportunities from people is by talking with them.
We have thousands, and it's actually tens of thousands of students that are living in this area. And if we're to improve, if we're to grow, we need them to stay and we need them to be the next leaders, but we haven't created the ecosystem for them to be successful.
Hi, I'm Heidi Knoblauch, and on this week's episode, we're going to be talking about social entrepreneurship. Seriously Connected is a podcast for women, and in this week's episode, we're going to be talking to some of my students about the problems that they are having, and actually, this is going to start a whole thing where we're going to ask people to call in. So get ready, get your phones ready to call in to our next episode. But this episode, again, is going to be my students, where we're talking about social entrepreneurship or how to start a business that has some social mission.
So one of the things that I love about my friend Heidi is that you are a total money where your mouth is person, right? Like you do not just speak out of your ass. You can bleep that. I do speak out of my ass, but you do not. And so I have had the opportunity to actually speak in front of your class, which means you have a class, which means people pay you to teach people to do things, whereas I'm just sitting over here doing this. And so I thought it would be really awesome to say to our audience, hey, you are a professor.
That's true.
And you teach entrepreneurship, but a very specific brand of it.
Yeah, that's true.
What is it?
So I teach at the University at Albany. I'm the Acker Newman Professor of Practice there. And so I teach leadership and entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, and then I run a fellowship for female entrepreneurs.
Let's focus today on what the concept of social entrepreneurship is.
Totally. I will have to say, of everything, I think that that's my favorite. It's my fall course. I've taught it for the past 3 years. First of all, the students at UAlbany are fantastic. My favorite student population to teach. The University at Albany is the most diverse SUNY school.
Yes.
And
that's a fact.
It's a fact.
Yeah.
And it is just an incredible student population. And so social entrepreneurship, essentially, the way that I teach it is I have them create a for-profit business that has some social mission or some purpose behind it. It improves the world, improves society, or improves the environment in some way. I challenge them to make it a for-profit business because it's difficult to do that with a for-profit business.
Well, we have segmented our society into, if you want to do good, you're not supposed to make money. And if you want to make money, you're not supposed to do good. And that is America for the last 100 years.
That's right.
And we never stopped to say, well, this is wrong.
That's right.
Like we never had that conversation. How is it possible we never actually had that conversation?
That's right.
Instead, we got into these political splits and we started talking about capitalism and anti-capitalism. Really, all we needed to do was teach younger kids it's okay to do good while making money.
Well, and they all want to do good.
Yes, they
while
are
making
inclined
money.
to do
they
good.
They want to do that. And companies that have some social mission perform better.
Absolutely they do.
Because you can get people to follow you rather than to follow a paycheck.
Right.
And so social entrepreneur, there's lots of different names for that mean slightly different things, right? There's a social enterprise. That's a not-for-profit that makes money and to fuel its not-for-profit. Social entrepreneurship, as I'm defining it in this class, that for-profit piece, it's very interesting because a lot of the students, they all come up with like the Tom Shoes model at first.
Yes.
So it's like, someone buys one, you give one away.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yep.
And I challenge them through things like design thinking, through systems thinking, like how do you get to the root of a problem and how do you build a business that solves that root? How do you pick the one thing and have a lever to fix an entire system?
Are they good?
I will say that yes. So what I describe to students, and I will share a graphic for the podcast, but as you know, ideas are very messy, right? When you have the idea for something, going towards a product of something, it's very messy in the beginning.
Yeah.
It is incredibly, incredibly hard to get students to admit that things are messy at the beginning. So this is probably the thing that I hope I gift them most, which is to have them tell me what is known and what is a hypothesis as they are starting these businesses. Because what their inclination is to do, and I think this is a natural thing, especially for Americans, is to say, this is how it is. Like, this is my business. This is what it's going to do. This is who's going to buy it. This is whatever. And blah, 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 blah. And really, they don't know any of that, right? So the ones that embrace saying like, well, I actually don't know. I need to talk to more people. They do the best.
They get
the
it. They get it right off the rip.
They get it right off the rip. People who try to make it very linear, they really struggle because you can only be linear probably after talking to like 1,000 people. So,
which is a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So their first assignment is to do a customer discovery report. So they have to talk to 3 people about a problem and to just figure out what someone's problems are. And after those 3 people, a lot of the students question whether they should talk to anybody else because they've already come up with the problem to start the business. So I think as long as they can get the concept that people are who are going to buy something, and people have problems, and people buy things when they have problems, like this very simple concept, then the students do exceptionally well. It's the buy one, get one, or whatever, buy one, give one model. That's something I struggle with, for sure.
Would you call that the biggest hurdle? Or are there other hurdles inside of, because, what you're doing is you're reprogramming the brain of somebody who has, luckily, they have reprogrammable brains, right? Like they're young, they haven't, you're not trying to reprogram me. I am the way I am, right? But still, it's different.
Yeah. I think for them, the biggest hurdle, one, is that it's only a semester.
Yeah.
So to come up with a business idea, unless you're coming in with a business idea, I do tell every single student who comes into the class, I say, if you have a business or a business idea that you want to work on in this class, like immediately come to me at the front of the classroom, because we just need to talk about how that's going to balance with social entrepreneurship. Because a lot of students at U Albany, they're fantastic and they have great business ideas that they want to take forward. I have a student who wants to make a gym. I'm simplifying it, but a gym. And he said, I actually want to do this at the end of class. I would like to work on it during class. And I said, okay, you have to figure out a social problem. And so what he found out by talking with people is that there aren't fields, like turf fields, for certain types of international sports. So he's making
cricket.
Like cricket.
We don't have any cricket fields here.
So he's making a whole business plan around kind of this cultural inclusion business model.
Okay.
So if you're a founder who is thinking about pitching investors and are nervous about the way that your pitch deck looks, there is a service called Hate Your Deck. Michael Lightman and I are very good friends, and he's developed this proprietary method for putting together pitch decks. And, I do see a lot of template pitch decks when I see founders pitch me, and those pitch decks are not super effective. So if you're interested in developing a very customized deck, you should reach out to Michael at Hate Your Deck. His email and his website are in the show notes. I do know he's going to be offering some live courses soon, which might be a good option for you if you are interested in developing a custom pitch deck.
This is, how many kids are in the class?
40.
40 kids.
There's normally 60.
Okay. How many would you say have formed ideas already? I'm genuinely curious.
So I'll answer your question in a slightly different way, which is that every semester in any class, any entrepreneurship class, I ask the students to raise their hand if they want to be an entrepreneur. I maybe get a third. Maybe a fourth.
Okay.
And then I say, how many of you want to be an entrepreneur now or right immediately after college? Maybe one hand. And this specific class, I for sure got a third want to be entrepreneurs, and I got 3 who had their own business idea.
People don't know this too much about me, but one of the ways that I've been able to be successful is I partnered up with 2 guys who are not from this area, who went to RPI, were very successful, sold a company, and decided to stay here. And so I love what you're doing because I think this is how we change our specific region is we have brain power here. How do we capture it and how do we maintain it? Mm-hmm. And you're giving them real life hope that it can happen here and now. It's unbelievable to me. It's wonderful.
Yeah, that is my favorite part. So we talked about hurdles and barriers.
Yeah.
My motivating piece and my favorite part is I get to work with these students who they truly do learn a lot.
Yeah.
I know it's a shock, but like they learn a lot from me.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And then a lot of them actually end up wanting to stay in the region.
We're always surprised when people listen to us and follow through on it, right? It's always like, wait, you did what? You're like, I was sort of just saying it.
That's right.
But
you're always surprised when I listen to you.
I'm shocked every time you listen to me. You went on vacation this year and I gave you an itinerary and you followed it to the T and I was like, what are you doing? And you're like, well, you know it. And I was like, yeah, it really is that easy, isn't it? Life is that simple, isn't it?
Right.
So what did you do this week in your class? We had the podcast coming up. You and I had talked about what social entrepreneurship is, and then you took this genius move. What did you do?
So I went up in front of the class yesterday, and I said, hey, I'm doing this podcast. I'm going to play a little bit of it during the break. And I played the episode with you, me, and Joaquin.
Yep.
And I played the part where he was talking about talent staying in the region.
Yep.
And I said, these are the issues we're discussing. If anybody would like to be on the podcast, tomorrow we're taking call-ins.
And so that's what we're doing.
That's what we're going to do.
Today.
That's right.
We're like a real show. When you actually start to have call-ins, people are like, oh, you do this? And funny thing you don't know about me. I had a radio show after college where it was sports comedy. We were super ahead of our time because, I'm naturally very funny. And we would stack the call-ins because you don't want to have a radio show and have nobody call in. But the best part of this was it was in Amsterdam, which is like 40 miles away, and the radio signal was very poor. So my parents would get in their car and drive out to the state, and they would call. My dad would call Don from Parts Unknown, and he would just sit there and ask us questions so that we could riff on our show. We are doing it a little more transparently. You just actually happen to have a class, and the students actually have questions because this is what they're trying to do in life, and I'm really pumped to be able to talk to them today, so I want to say thank you for doing that.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, cool. So who's our first caller? I mean, who do we got up next?
Our first caller is going to be Adoji.
All right, let's go talk to Adoji.
This episode's hot take, I needed to have a guest with me because my hot take is that if somebody asks you for a meeting, it is okay to ask them what the purpose of the meeting is. And if the purpose of the meeting does not advance you, you're allowed to say no.
So what this sounds like to me is sometimes people reach out and they're like, hey, do you mind if I just pick your brain? Could I get a coffee with you? And I love meeting with new people as an entrepreneur.
Love it. 100%.
I feel like it fuels me, it energizes me, and I get inspired by them. But sometimes it can be such a drain and exhausting. And at times I can feel used. Mm-hmm. If someone actually is trying to get a free consultation session mm-hmm. based on my livelihood. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I have to remind people that what I do is my business.
That's right.
So
how do you do that though?
I would stop during the call, or the conversation at wherever we are, if we're having coffee or whatever we might be doing. I would say something like, well, yeah, I would love to talk with you more about this. I think you're really onto something, but if we want to explore this together further, we should set up a date and time to specifically do that. Because as you know, this is my business and I would love to be in business with you.
Right.
I would be honored to earn your business. But then I have to remind them that this is my business and I would love to work with them, but let's just find a time, carve out a time. We can get to know each other right now. But mm-hmm. if we want to go deeper into this thing that's specifically my business, then let's schedule another time to do that.
A strategy that I was thinking about.
Oh, tell me.
My strategy was going to be to say that between the hours of 9 and 5, that is business time for me. And so if you'd like to schedule something that is business related, I'm happy to during that time. But if not, then we'll have to get coffee early in the morning or in the evening just to socialize.
Okay. What if they have coffee with you and then they ask you business questions?
Then we can say I can set up a time during my 9 to 5.
Exactly.
Because also because that is an interesting strategy, right? Because if you say, okay, these are my working hours, I can't meet with more than one person for coffee before my working hours. Mm-mm. And I really can't meet with more than one person after my working hours. So that's just 2 social meetings a day versus if you have this kind of all day, really open door policy, which, to be very honest, why it's confusing for me is it serves me pretty well. I never say no to a meeting. Never. I never, ever, ever say no to a meeting because people have been very generous with their time with me. The problem is that when it's too many meetings, when it's just too many meetings, then you don't get a lot of stuff done. You got to come up with your own strategy for managing your time. I think some of it can include meetings that are not necessarily totally business related. That's really fine. But just being very clear and upfront with boundaries.
Yes, I think establishing boundaries at the beginning of a conversation really helps the person you're talking to know not to cross a line with 100%. You. And so it's like being respectful of them to let them know what your boundaries are.
100%.
Trial and error. Once you give away too much of yourself,
that's right.
You're just too exhausted at the end of the day. And then you find that you can't do what you need to do.
That's right.
For yourself.
So I preach all the time, take the meeting, take the opportunity, 100%. I've definitely gotten to a point in my career, though, where I can't say yes to every meeting. Mm-mm. And so that's different for me.
What do you say?
Well, right now I'm just saying yes to every meeting, but I'm brainstorming. My hot take is that you don't have to meet with everyone, but the hot take is for me.
So the hot take is take every meeting, but also don't.
That's like what people say to women. You know what I mean? They're like, listen, be really attractive, but don't be slutty.
Yeah.
So, on brand.
Oh, it's like the whole thing from Barbie.
That's right.
That whole
thing.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard. I don't know.
So, take every meeting, but you don't have to take every meeting.
Mm-mm.
Draw boundaries. And then tell me how you did it, please.
Call in
and tell me how you did it, please. I really do need to know. My hot take is like begging you to tell me how to, manage my calendar. So our first caller in is Edoji. Hi, Edoji. How are you?
I'm doing well.
So, Edoji, I know that you and I interact in my capacity as a professor at U Albany, but you also had a chance to listen to the podcast. Is that right?
Yes, yeah.
So, Edoji, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a college student at U Albany, and I'm studying business administration with a focus in marketing and entrepreneurship.
I'm curious how you got to U Albany.
Went to Hudson Valley first, and I studied business there, and over at Hudson Valley, I was able to create an entrepreneur club, and I was the president of investment club. And after making the entrepreneur club, I found out how fun it is to be, an entrepreneur, and how if you get a group of people together and bounce ideas off each other, we could really make a difference. And that's why when I came to U Albany, I wanted to experience the same thing, but I really couldn't find anything at U Albany. Actually.
Ooh, dagger to my heart.
That's a little disconcerting, right?
Yeah, that's a little disconcerting, yeah.
Are you from this area or are you from somewhere else?
Yeah, I'm from this area. I'm from Rensselaer.
You're from Rensselaer, all right.
Right next to Albany, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you couldn't find anything at SUNY Albany. Boy, that hurts. That actually stings.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the reason why is, at least at the college level, when I came here, everybody already had their own group, and everybody was isolated with each other already. Being a transfer student, it's also hard to get to know people, and because there's not a group already dedicated towards entrepreneurs bouncing ideas each other off each other and just being a group, that's why it's even harder to get it started as well.
Yeah, I mean, this goes to the core of what we've been talking about for a few weeks here, right? Like, we don't have the infrastructure in place to encourage people. Do you want to stay here when you graduate, or do you have plans to go somewhere else?
I actually want to stay here because even though I said there's not a group or like a place where there's, entrepreneurial spirit, individually as people, there are people who are creative and are able to do it if we get like a space for them. That's what I believe.
Yeah, we need spaces. I was watching our podcast, which I don't really like watching myself on video ever, and I was sort of struck by the fact that I used the phrase safe space to describe entrepreneurs, which is a little, there's like a juxtaposition there that doesn't make sense, but here you are hearing it. If we can have places for people to gather, Adoji is like number 1A of the people that we need to be attracting and keeping here. Somebody who has gone to school, wants to do this, and is already inclined to like the region. This is like the most important guy we have on the phone right now, right?
Totally agree. Adoji, what makes you comfortable taking a risk?
That's actually a difficult question because even though I took a risk in starting my own thing at one point, because it didn't go well, even though I did learn from the failure, because of that instance, I'm now scared to take a risk because of the effort that I put in, and I wasn't able to go anywhere with it. Now, that was all because I was alone, right? So I feel like if I had other people that was backing me up, or even other people to motivate me, then I'll be more inclined to take risks.
I think I'm gonna pick on you a little bit here because I think people's failures are way more exciting than their successes. What did you try to do, and what happened?
It was an online clothing brand, and at first it was going well. I had support from everybody. I was posting on all my social media, and I did have support from my friends, family, and even the local group. And this is before I even made the first product. But as soon as I made the first product, the people who were hyping me up and saying, they're going to buy it and they're going to do this and that, it never ended up happening. And it was it seems like, they were all lying to me,
Was it a good product?
I think it was good. I did have people that did support me from my group and did buy it, and they were happy with it. But I guess I couldn't influence enough to get that to be more successful, and that's the thing that I needed.
I'm sorry, I'm commandeering the conversation,
I love it.
but
I get to talk to Adoji a lot.
Well, what he's talking about is exactly what Ja was talking about last week when we talked, which was, if you have your idea and the people that are in your closest proximity is who you are sharing the idea with, you're going to fail because they aren't taking risks and they're just in your circle because you're in your circle. And I got to tell you, man, that's probably the most amazing lesson to learn at the age of 23. I'm in my mid 40s and I'm still learning that lesson. So the fact that you have learned it is probably 10 times more valuable than the money you could have earned by being successful. So I want to encourage you that, knowing that people say they're going to support you, it's not that they didn't want to, right? It's just that people that are closest to us, their natural inclination oftentimes is to just say what they think you need to hear, they say what they think you want to hear rather than what you need to hear. And that's why I asked you if it was a good product, because if it was a good product, then all right, you just had the wrong market. That's fine. That's okay. What do you want to hit in? You're studying marketing. Marketing's the most important thing in the world. So what do you want to do now? Where are we?
So definitely, I want to do something that tackles social entrepreneurship. That's what I want to do now. After taking her class, I learned how if you want to make society better, it doesn't mean you have to give up on money as well. If you could do both at once, I think it's a great way to be successful. And that's what I want to do in the future.
Yeah, I would encourage you that you absolutely can do everything at once, and you can do both at once. And I guess I would argue, I think I've made a brand out of doing both at once. I think that personally, when I started out, I felt like I was just doing stuff, right? Whatever it wasn't great. And then I pivoted to telling my story in a way where I was just so authentic and so raw and real. And even if the general public didn't buy it, it was because it was true and I knew it was true in my heart, it gave me encouragement in those moments where people, also Adoji, like I have had what happened to me, like, oh, you said you were going to do this and you didn't do it. It gives you that encouragement. Like if you know your moral compass is pointing in the right way and you are doing it for the greater good, I feel like gazillion times more likely to succeed.
Yeah, I agree. When I first did my thing, I really didn't have a purpose, but I feel like if I were to start something where I can, have a purpose or a mission, then I would feel like it would push me further and just get me further than what I did.
That's awesome, Adoji. We're going to wrap it there and go to our next caller, but thanks so much for calling in.
Yeah, of course. It's nice talking to you guys.
Keep going, man.
So hi, I'm Heidi, belated introduction. I'm a consultant. I typically work with economic developers and founders and other people who are interested in building out an entrepreneurial ecosystem. If you would like to work with me, find me at my website, HeidiKnoblauch.com. And that's linked in the show notes. So our second caller is Riley.
Riley, what's Riley do?
Riley makes hot sauce.
Oh, and you brought it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm terrified of this. Okay. Yeah, let's talk to Riley.
All right, Riley.
Let me introduce myself. My name is Riley Cusack. I'm a senior at UW Albany. I'm a business student, double major in history and business. I have some asks about my hot sauce business. So I started a business about 2 years ago in my dorm room, much like many college kids do, selling hot sauce. It's been a bumpy road, and I've gotten all my certifications to sell locally and within stores and set up some farmers markets and things like that. And I just kind of wanted to ask, at what point should I start to look into hiring another person to help me out?
Ooh,
like,
nice.
what's the
Good
metric
question.
for that?
That's a great question. Can I ask you some questions first? You just said something fascinating to me. So I've been out of school for 20 years. You said, like most college students, I started a side hustle in my dorm room. Is that like a reality of today? Are most people actually doing that?
Well, the thing is, a lot of people talk about doing it. And a lot of people say that they're doing things. And it's up to you whether or not you believe them or not and what their side hustle is, because everybody wants to have one because that's the fad of today. And, in a crazy economy like we live in today, everybody wants to make a little bit of extra cash and they say they're doing things, but whether or not that actually comes to fruition is definitely up for debate.
So awesome. Why hot sauce?
Well, one, my dad is an executive chef, so I've been cooking with him since before I could walk. I have a love for food. I have a love for spicy food. We made a hot sauce together, and I was like, I think I could make this better. And, I made it over and over and over and went through, different recipe, changing this, changing that, got it perfect. And then it was the recipe that I would bring to like family gatherings and I'd make chicken wings on New Year's Eve for the Super Bowl or for a Super Bowl party or something like that. And everybody would tell me, oh man, you got to sell this. You got to sell this. You got to sell this. This was like my freshman year in college, and I wasn't even thinking about business yet because I was still a physics and math major. I wanted to go into theoretical astrophysics initially.
So Riley, your question was, when should you start adding employees?
Yes. At what metric should I be measuring to when I can take on a new employee, and what margins I'm looking for, how much it actually costs to hire somebody, things of that nature. I have just no idea.
So here's a question for you. Do you think you want to grow this hot sauce business? What does growth look like for you?
So growth has been slower than what it could be, as I am using this as a learning mechanism for business, and I've kept everything in hot sauce separate. So all the money that I've made within hot sauce has gone right back into the business. There's been no outside funding into that from my other forms of income. And if I put other forms of income into it, it would grow a lot faster. I believe I could do a lot more. But I want to know at what point, how much would I need to be making to potentially hire somebody, and what metrics I know whether or not I am ready or not, because I just have no clue.
So I know a little bit about your operation, but do you want to just tell Jeff and just everybody listening kind of what it looks like now? Where are you making the hot sauce?
I'm making it at my home. I live in Guilderland, and I had an inspector come, and grateful or blessed enough to have a kitchen that's big enough to where I can separate commercial and, in-house production. And I have separate spacing within my house as well. It's a separate storage area from all my ingredients and all my processes that I go through. And I had to have a health inspector come and do it. So it's fun. It's out of my house. I make it around. I just passed an awesome milestone. For the last month, I've sold over 100 bottles every week.
That's awesome.
And just for some margins, I make the bottles for $3.97 a piece, and I sell them for about $8 a bottle.
Wow. That's really great.
It's really great. So I would say, just to directly answer your question, I would say that, before figuring out how many employees you would want to have, I would just figure out if you want the operation to be yours or if you want to do a co-packer or some other manufacturing process where you can hand off your recipe, right? So I'm sure that Jeff and I know some of them around New York State. I'm sure Jeff does too. But I think one of the things that I would advise you to do is think about, okay, do you want to have employees and to start your own manufacturing line, or do you want to partner with somebody who already has something like that?
Yeah, so I've actually been looking into some licensing, and I've been talking with some of the people at Brooks Barbecue, as they do a lot of bottling and a lot of things of that nature here in New York State. And I'm not sure if I'd need an employee to have there, or whether or not I would just completely offload this onto them and just keep a portion in royalty or something of that nature. But I feel like there's still so much more that I could milk out of this and learn from it. And even if it's just one other person that I hire to help me with delivering to my some of my stores that I'm in, and doing things of that nature, just the menial tasks that isn't actually involved in making the hot sauce or doing the whole processes that are involved in it, but kind of just taking a little bit of that load off of me when it comes to the basic tasks.
Riley, what happens now when you have to go on vacation?
I've set aside a challenge for myself. So I've talked with all my stores and told them that I'm going to study abroad in Ireland and I'm not going to be around for a while. I'm going to make a large stockpile to get through them as far as I can, just so within means of the product doesn't spoil or whatever by the time they actually would be able to sell it. But in Ireland, I want to speed run the hot sauce business again, and using everything that I have that I know now, doing it all over again in Ireland, and just seeing how much faster that I could do it over there, and maybe use what I've learned to make another business and do that faster potentially as well.
I think that Heidi answered the question for you in a really great way, which is you got to figure out what you want to do. It sounds like based on your profit margin and how you just created the spot. And she actually brought a bottle here. I love your branding. It looks great. I think it's just, what do you want to do, right? You obviously you got your stuff together. I think Heidi and I are laughing at each other, we would invest in you, right? You're good. It's really a question that you need to answer for yourself. What do I want out of life? And it feels like, if you quadruple the amount you have, you could probably afford somebody. And it sounds like, given how many bottles you're selling with the way you're doing it, quadrupling probably would be pretty easy.
Yeah, it would involve probably a lot more production, because I do have 2 vats going simultaneously that pump out about 96 bottles every 3 days, because I have them 3 to 4 days, because I have them off cycle for the fermenting and the stewing process, because that all takes time. So that's on the production side. That's what I need to probably hammer in a little bit more. If I have 8 vats going at once, my basement might start looking a little weird if the cops ever raided it. But
I have it's a different kind of cookhouse. This is really great. I know you said your dad was a chef. My brother is actually a Michelin star chef, and we'll be home for Thanksgiving next week. And I just tasted this hot sauce because Heidi brought the bottle, and it's amazing. And I'm going to give it to him, and I'm going to see what he thinks.
The other thing about that hot sauce is being in Heidi's class as well. We're all focused on social entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And before that class, I hadn't had anything like a vision or a mission or anything. I was just making hot sauce to make money, It was a side hustle, but now like in kind of doing some like research into it and being like, okay, what can I pull from my product that, you know, gives it that extra oomph in the marketplace and gives it like a different sort of adds a little bit more value to it. And I challenge you to read on the back of that bottle. Is there anything that looks artificial to you, or there's no ingredients on there that are, you know, just like Chipotle sort of thing. There's no ingredients that's hard to pronounce. The hardest thing on there is Worcestershire sauce. I want to assign the value of transparency to it because I do think that, you know, there's a lot of problems going around with companies just putting anything and everything into the things that they make. And as long as they pass FDA approval, they're fine to go. But people don't really know what they're putting in their bodies. Like I myself am an athlete, and I you know, pay a lot of attention into what I put in my body, but I can't be absolutely perfect. So being able to do this and at least help in that regard a little bit with like product transparency, ingredient transparency, and just letting people know exactly what they're putting in their body and have them understand what they're putting into their body is a new value that I've found in researching social entrepreneurship through Heidi's class.
You know, one of the great things about social entrepreneurship is actually the collisions that can happen when you start talking about it with other people. So in this conversation, you have inserted an idea into my mind. So I'm actually working right now with a partner of mine on a community kitchen in downtown Albany that will be for rent on an app. You come in, you can use the kitchen space. It'll be certified like you went through and got it. But for people who don't have the privilege of having such a large kitchen but do have a product, they can come in and do it. And as we're listening to the call, I'm sitting here thinking, why wouldn't we also create an ecosystem in that kitchen where, no, Riley doesn't want to hire a full-time employee, but this organization is here to help provide support to people who are super close, so that instead of Riley having to answer, do I want to continue to do this, he can test the waters first, right? And like this is the beauty of social entrepreneurship, of people working together, is solving problems you didn't know that were even problems if someone said it.
Good luck with the rest of the show, guys.
Thanks. So in this week's episode, we talked to some of my students from social entrepreneurship, and this is this week's serious business lesson. If you have a purpose with your company or have some bigger social mission, it is much easier to get employees to come on board to your company and to follow you, because people who are navigating the world with a purpose are much more likely to stay with your company. So it is not only a good thing to do for society to create a business that gives back to the world, but it's also a very good thing for employee retention and even for your profits.
Our last caller is Quinn, who I believe is a senior in your class and sort of has a what to do with life question.
Hi, Quinn. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, everyone. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
We're doing great. So, Quinn, do you want to just tell us a little bit about you and where you're going to school?
I am a senior right now at the University at Albany. I am from out of state. I'm from New Jersey. My family is from around Albany. Both of my parents were raised in a small town about 40 minutes away from Albany. So I feel pretty connected to the city, and that's why I chose to go to school here, despite being out of state. And, well, I'm liking it so far. Got one more semester left.
Awesome.
So I like that you said you like it so far with one semester left. It's good. It's good that you're there. So what do you, where are you in life, and what are you looking at? What are you staring down the barrel of? What are you trying to do?
Sure. Well, it's kind of the sunset of my college career. Like I said, I have one semester left. I was fortunate enough to get an internship at a medical device distribution center. They are looking at offering me a full-time job as a medical device sales rep if I check all their boxes by the time that I graduate. I'm going back to work for them over the winter. So that's what I'm looking at right now. It's not an industry with a whole lot of creativity, but it definitely is a good point to start right after school.
So, Quinn, we met because you're in a social entrepreneurship class. Why did you take that class?
Well, besides the fact, obviously, that I had to take it, it is something that I'm really interested in, with how companies can sort of maneuver around and contribute to a positive benefit to society and try to make money in some way, shape, or form. It's really interesting to see how the creativity is sort of performed in that area.
So your question is, do I do the medical device rep thing?
Well, it's not so much that, actually. I'm all for starting a typical career, but I would say that my biggest fear is working and putting a lot of energy into something that I don't necessarily believe in, or I'm passionate about waking up every day and doing. We had the assistant director of the research and economic development at the university teach one of our classes, and he had a quote that really stuck with me. He said, "There has never been a time in history where there have been more opportunities in an entrepreneurial sense than right now." And I had a two-part question from that. I would say, do you guys agree with that statement? And how do you view your environment methodically to sort of find these opportunities and build something from nothing?
Ooh.
Great questions.
Very loaded, I know, but
I want to take part one. You can take part two. Is that all right?
That's fine.
So part one, I would say I agree with, but yes, I think the expansion of the way that we communicate and the rapidity with which, how fast we can do it, has allowed people to create opportunities in a way that is astonishing for somebody who grew up. I was like 20 when I got my first cell phone, right? So, and it was like a big phone. So I come from a time where everything was a lot slower. And so I do think that the opportunities are there, and they're hard for me to wrap my head around with how many there actually are. Where I don't want to send someone off in the wrong direction is, you are also heavily reliant upon your own ability to finish, right? Like you can have great ideas, but when you're talking about being an entrepreneur at a young age and where you're going to take your life, you have to have an expectation that you have an 80-hour work week ahead of you for the next 10 years. You're going to sacrifice a lot. And unless you hit the entrepreneurial lottery, it's going to be challenging. That being said, the challenge itself offers you so many healthy opportunities. I'm glad you used the word typical when you said career, because that's what a career is. It becomes typical, and it has some restricting things in it. And if you find yourself mentally having a conversation with yourself that you don't necessarily want that typical, you probably don't want that typical. And now is probably the best time in history for somebody to go take that chance.
And I would say for part two, this isn't exactly how you phrased it, Quinn, so just tell me if I got it wrong. But, it's like, how do you see the opportunities, right? How do you see the different opportunities that you can take, and how do you see the different business opportunities specifically? And so for me, that's always people. Every single time. It's always people. It's talking with people. It's somebody inviting me to an event and going with them. I never say no to a coffee, which almost always is beneficial for me. Sometimes it can nip me in the bud when I have meetings that have no purpose. But I thrive when I have a network of people to bounce ideas off of. And so the biggest lesson that I would take from that is that I see a lot of entrepreneurs who they want to keep their idea to themselves because they think that someone's going to steal it.
Worst possible idea
To keep it to yourself. And so the only way that you see opportunities and get better and get opportunities from people is by talking with them. So like even going into, a typical career or whatever the thing may be, you can take that entrepreneurial spirit with you. Always meet with people, go where people tell you to go, take every opportunity that you see. And start writing things down. I also keep a journal every single night. I write down exactly what happened in my day. It's just a few lines in a journal. And I look back at that and say, okay, this happened here, this is how I can improve.
Quinn, do you have a concept that you would want to pursue?
That's sort of the challenge. I mean, there's nothing right now on paper that I have that's sort of like a dream or something that a sort of start to an idea. I don't have any of that right now, but I can just tell that what I want to do is something I want to be passionate about, and I want to wake up every day and I don't mind working these 80-hour weeks like you were talking about. I just want to do it for something that I truly care about.
And I think that that's right. And also it's okay to go into a job when you don't yet have that idea yet. It's more than okay.
It's totally okay to go. So now we're we're talking about the difference between a job and a career, though, right? So, like, if you're Quinn and you're sitting here thinking, I may have this opportunity, I got to check all these boxes. You know, for me, as somebody who is very driven by the need to make change in my life, every time I go into something, and I mean anything, I put a 3.5-year horizon on it, and I will literally say, in the best possible scenario that this works, I'm giving it 3.5 years. And I think if you're 21 years old and you're about to graduate from college, you know, saying you're going to do something until you're 24, 25, you can't go wrong, right? You absolutely can't go wrong. You're not going to miss anything. You're not going to lose any steps. You know, nobody, I would say if that's there for you and it's an opportunity, I would just say use that opportunity, right? So I did this. When I graduated, I took a job as a newspaper reporter and ended up being the best thing I ever did because I met so many people that created new paths for me that I never saw. So I think that first job is great. Just don't, if you're enjoying a social entrepreneurship class and you were smart enough to take it in the first place, don't go somewhere when you're 21 years old and take a pension and figure out what's going to happen afterwards. Just, yeah.
And also don't feel like you have to be stuck either. So like, and Jeff has to coach me through this. So this is something that is, I think a lot of people feel this way, which is that, you know, they're worried about the perception of themselves in their career. But I've been a historian of science and medicine. I've been a restaurateur. I've been, I don't know, what else have I been? I guess a podcast person now, a professor, you know.
It's a career.
Like, yeah, that's right.
You've run the gamut. You're a jack of all trades.
Right. And it's all of these things. And I was going to say I used to, but I still think of that as a detriment.
Yeah, I know you do. It's crazy.
I know it's crazy.
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to pass on to my students is to be honest about that. You know, you do worry about that, and you worry about that feeling of like people see you as like whatever, not being like jumping around, right? And so, but this is kind of us giving you permission, Quinn, and you know, is like if you're going into this, I think give it your all until something else or until you don't want to anymore.
I have a really great story that I can share if you want, if we have time to do it. Quinn, I had just started my real estate company. This is about 12 years ago. And I mean, when I say just started, I was 4 weeks into this new company where I was like, I'm going to change the world. No. But I got a phone call one day from a friend of mine who is also an entrepreneur. His name's Tom Nardacci. And Tom said to me, have you read the paper this morning? And I said, yeah, why? And he goes, well, did you see that the city of Troy can't open its marina this year because it doesn't have a dock master? And I was like, yeah, I did read that. And he goes, why don't we do it? And I said, I don't even know how to swim. And he started laughing and he's like, yeah, but like, how hard could it be? Like, you're just inviting boats in, you fill them with gas, you tie it up. And I was like, I'll be in your office in 10 minutes, right? And all of a sudden, I knew Tom from being a newspaper reporter. And all of a sudden, that door opened up and Tom and I got together. We went to the city of Troy the next day, offered to run the marina. We got a $150,000 grant to run the marina. And at the end of that season, we had to write a plan or a report about how our ventures went. And we actually entitled it No Boats Sank. That was the title of it. But what we got out of that was super interesting because today, if you go down to the marina in downtown Troy, you will see leftover things from what we did 12 years ago at this marina. And it was just a really wonderful opportunity to expand a base of knowledge and realize I like this, I don't like this. And it sounds like listening to Quinn, who has an opportunity in front of him, but isn't sure how to embrace that entrepreneurial spirit yet, that the best thing you can do is just embrace anything that's in front of you.
Totally agree. Thanks, Quinn, for calling in.
Sounds good. Thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Quinn.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
That was fun.
For me, it was a really good, this is our 4th podcast. We talked a lot about how to build an ecosystem here. And I think with 3 callers, we really wrapped up the why. Why do we need an infrastructure? Because we have thousands, and it's actually tens of thousands of students that are living in this area. And if we're to improve, if we're to grow, we need them to stay and we need them to be the next leaders, but we haven't created the ecosystem for them to be successful. And those 3 callers are like example 1A, 1B, and 1C as to why. Because if you're not growing, you're dying, right? Like, we should just say that. If you're not growing, then you are dying. as a region. And we have the asset that we need here. We have tens of thousands of young brains that can create a new world where we live. And it's our job as the generation ahead of them to forge a path that allows them to move easier. Agree or disagree?
I agree. I think the one thing that I would add is that I think a lot of times we think about we need to kind of capture these minds, capture these students and kind of keep them here, but we don't talk about getting informed by them.
Yeah.
And so I think my favorite part of the 3 calls today was, by teaching at UAlbany Albany and by just these calls, I get to get informed by these students, right? So they give me feedback. And so it's how do we incorporate their feedback into what we're already doing and then make things for them and have them make things for us.
That's beautifully said, because I think maybe we did a partial disservice the first couple of podcasts, because I had guest lectured in your class last year. And a lot of these conversations are in my head permanently because you have people saying, I am here. I do want to be here. I am willing to stay. Give me this.
That's right.
And this is what we need to create.
Correct. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Great news. Jeff and I are going to be taking over Seriously Connected for the month of December, so stay tuned.